Hi, my name is Kristin Caliendo, founder of the Tutti Flute Academy, and our Tutti success story feature is Dr. Kristin Caliendo, my beloved wife, whose original interview as one of the initial 25 flute guest artists for the 2017 Academy was how to develop a flute studio in your community, no matter where you live. It was filled with practical advice, and to continue that bridge or create a further bridge on that commonsensical approach to flute community and building a studio, Kristin's here to share with us 5 practice tips that are essential. And listen, I'm telling you, these tips are not just for the young. These tips are for everybody in all age demographics. So Kristin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Christopher, for having me as a special guest on the Tutti Flute Academy. I'm going to be talking about 5 points that will help your practice time be efficient and effective. So my first point is to have a regular practice time. Have a specific time of the day that you schedule into your daily schedule that you will be practicing. Sometimes it's just one time, like in the morning, or sometimes you can have 3 different sessions throughout the day, a morning, an afternoon, and evening. This is essential so that your body clock knows this is the time that I'm going to be practicing my flute. It's very essential to have that time. And I also recommend that maybe 2 or 3 times a week, or maybe just once a week, that you have a practice buddy, somebody that you can get together with, and that is your practice time with that person. It's really an encouraging, effective way, and it's a way that holds you accountable to keep your practice schedule. Someone that you can talk to about your practice schedule and also practice with to keep your time efficient, effective, and to have those regular times. And I tell all my students, if you can't practice every day, at least practice 15 minutes just to maintain your flute abilities. So 15 minutes a day is essential and absolute, and then try to go beyond that as much as possible throughout the week. My second tip would be to have a practice schedule. So for each session that you've already decided when you're going to practice, then organize your actual practice time. So divide your practice session into maybe beginning with long tones and then moving to Taffanel Gobert or some Marcel Moïse practices, and then move from there to perhaps some etudes or orchestral excerpts, and then finally move to your solo piece or pieces that you're working on with your teacher. My third tip is to have an environment that you decide to use as your practice space. So whether that's a practice room at a school or university, or it's a room in your home, or maybe a church sanctuary, or even practicing on stage in a concert hall. Those are all great places to practice, but be specific that that is your environment so that when you get in that environment, you know this is where you're going to practice. Another thing to consider when choosing an environment is that the acoustics are appropriate for the flute, that they're not too live, not too dead, and that the environment is clean, is not a lot of disruptions in your environment. Can really be a place where you feel comfortable in your body, in that environment, in that space, and in an area where you can really focus your mind. My fourth tip is to always bring a notebook with you to your practice session. In that notebook should be your daily schedule for practicing, so you know exactly what you're there to do. Also, you can take down any notes during your practice time, perhaps some notes of things you want to ask your teacher in your next lesson, or just some observations about that practice session, maybe how you feel about your playing that day. And then also a notebook that you can just write down those random thoughts that pop into your brain that have nothing to do with your practice time, but are cluttering up your brain and distracting you from really focusing on the music and on what you're there to do. And one of my favorite quotes, I think was by Benjamin Franklin, but he said that it's better to have a short pencil than a long memory. My fifth and final tip is to take care of your physical body. Your physical body is an instrument, just like the flute is an instrument. It needs to be taken well care of. So 3 things you can do to take care of your physical body are to exercise, so really develop your muscles and help build your lungs, which will benefit your flute playing. The second tip would be to eat well, to eat real food and food that nourishes your body. And remember that every bite you take is building your body, either in a positive or in a negative. So eat foods that you know are healthy. And the third thing would be to sleep well. And just know that sleeping 7 to 10 hours is what's recommended, and that really helps the body to rejuvenate and so that you can wake up the next day in the best self. So hope those tips help, and enjoy your practice time.
You know, I've listened to these 5 tips, Kristin, and as a fellow musician speaking to you, it is so often that I forget these tips. I forget to incorporate. I don't know the reason why. Perhaps you can share with us, but what can we do to make sure we're incorporating these tips of yours, these strategies, on a daily basis as a lifestyle habit?
I think what happens is a lot of times anxiety and stress kind of overwhelm us, and we just kind of look at what's the shortest way to get to what our goal is, instead of looking at what is the best path to get there. And these practices really should be implemented in your daily life, whether you're preparing for a recital or you're just practicing in this season of your life. Because then when you do have those stress times and those anxiety moments, that you've already established habits. And they say it takes about 30 days, some people say 3 months, to develop a habit. So taking these 5 points and making them habits in your life will help depress the anxiety and the stress that happens throughout life, especially as a performer.
Kristin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your enthusiasm, your passion about basically just appropriate habits. You didn't only speak about the actual performance of the instrument, but eating habits, sleeping habits, all of this holistic approach to becoming, to being on point, top of your game every day of your life. Thank you, love.
Thank you, Christopher, for having me. It was a joy to be here.